Everyone, and welcome to my channel. I hope that you are all good. In today's video, we're going to be doing this beginner friendly ombre design using some Modelones acrylics. I did in my previous video swatch a couple of these, but I wanted to get some designs done using them just so you can kind of get an idea of how the products work and what they are like. So if you did miss that video, check it out. It's the previous video that I uploaded on my channel. So to begin with, I'm coming in with the Modelones white acrylic powder, and I'm just going to start off as though I was doing a classic ombre baby boomer nail. So I'm applying my white acrylic to the very tip of the nail and then just blending it back. So you'll see here when I place that bead down, I always like to feather it back into the previous bead of acrylic just to make sure that it all blends nicely and there's no shadowing between the two colours. Now I'm keeping this layer of white quite thin because I'm going to be coming over the top with some glitter, and then we're going to need to encapsulate. And then at this point as well, I was looking at the nail and felt as though I hadn't took the white down as far down the nail as I wanted to. So I do come in with another bead of white acrylic just to make that white fade further down the nail bed area. So I'm placing that bead of acrylic down, blending it up to begin with, and then flipping my brush around and blending it back. You always want to make sure that that back part of your acrylic is blended out when you're doing a baby boomer or an ombre so that your next colour fades nicely over the top. I then did give that acrylic a minute or two to set up a little bit just because I find it easier to allow the first colour to set a little bit. Then I'm coming in with a small bead of the pink acrylic and I'm just starting to create a fade. I started off by just doing it with a nice small bead just so I could see how well this pink blended over the white. Then I'm going to pick up a more medium-sized bead of acrylic and place that down just away from the cuticle area. Then I've wiped off my brush and I'm using the very tip of my brush to tap that up into place around that cuticle area, trying to get it as close to the cuticle as possible without touching the skin. And then I'm blending that down over the previous bead of acrylic that we applied. And as you can see, I'm doing quite a lot of light feathery strokes just to make sure that acrylic blends down over the white without pulling too much of the pink acrylic down. And then I'm just going to come in with a little bit more acrylic where it's needed just to build up the colour and to perfect the blend. At all times I'm keeping my brush quite wet so that I'm able to blend that acrylic out. And then here you'll see I just cleaned up the white a little bit where I'd taken that pink a little bit too far down. Now I've dipped into my pre-mixed glitter acrylic. So this one is a clear acrylic and it has some iridescent and opal style glitters in there. I will check the numbers of all these colours and leave them in the description box below. And what I'm basically doing is placing this down all over the white part of the nail and then blending it back into the pink. Now, if you are a beginner, whenever you're doing something like an ombre or a fade, if you aren't 100% happy with it, cover it with a little bit of glitter and it makes the world of difference. It just will help soften any imperfections that are in your blend. I was quite happy with the pink and white blend, but I didn't want the design to be too simple. So that's why I decided at the start of the video I was going to be using this particular glitter. And I thought it looked really pretty over that white as well. Now that we've finished the acrylic design, I'm going to come in and encapsulate. So we're encapsulating to protect our blend and our glitter, but also to build up the rest of the strength and structure of the nail. So I placed my first bead of acrylic down, blended out the back of it slightly, and then I'm just walking and pressing that down to the very tip of the nail, trying to make sure my application is neat and as even as possible so that there's going to be less filing to do. So that's why you can see I'm always going over the side walls and the tip of the nail, especially just to make sure there's not loads of excess acrylic there that I'm then going to have to file off. Then I'm picking up my next bead of acrylic and I'm placing this in that back third, so in that apex area, tapping it up towards to blend it into the cuticle area, and then I'm leaving the bulk of the acrylic in the back third for the apex and just blending the top of that down until it reaches the previous bead of acrylic, and then I'm just smoothing and blending it all out, making sure there's not too many lumps or bumps and just checking the nail from all angles that I'm happy with the application. If at this point there was any areas that I felt needed more clear acrylic, this is where I would come in and add that, but I was pretty happy with the overall nail. So I'm now going to come in and file. I did start off by filing with this particular file, which is a metal file build, but I was struggling a little bit filing on the practice hand with this one. So I do switch to a regular file in a minute, but to start off with, what I'm basically doing is neatening up the shape a little bit. I do like to do this first of all to begin with, and then I'm coming in underneath and just neatening up the lower arches, making sure that acrylic is nice and crisp. And then I'm going to come over the surface of the nail and refine and contour it. This is what I found a little bit difficult to do with the metal file board on the practice hand, because the tip does tend to slide around a little bit. So I've switched to a regular file. I believe I'm using the 100 grit side here, and I'm just coming up the side walls around the cuticle area and then down the other side wall, and then I'm coming over the entire surface of the nail just to make sure everything's really nicely refined, that I've got my apex in the right place, that there's not too much thickness where it doesn't need to be, and just removing any bulk or bumps that are in the nail until I'm happy with the entire surface of the nail. Then I'm going to come back in again and neaten up the sidewalls. So when I'm filing my sidewalls, I'm making sure to hold my file flat up against that acrylic so that it doesn't sort of dip into the acrylic, because we want a nice straight sharp sidewall. I'm always checking the nail from all angles and then filing wherever it needs to be. Once I've finished a majority of my filing, I flip the file over and I tend to work with the 180 grit side just to help soften some of the scratches that the file leaves behind. But I do still also anyway come in and buff the nail just to smooth everything out when it does come to those scratches, because sometimes you'll find that your 100 grit file leaves scratches on your acrylic and certain top coats don't fully cover those, so you can kind of still see them at times, if that makes sense. I'm then coming in with a mini buffing block and just buffing gently over the surface of the nail. You don't want to over buff, especially if you're going to be applying a gel top coat, because you don't want your acrylic nail to be too smooth, otherwise your gel will have nothing to stick to. But I'm just giving it a light buff, and then I'm going to give it a good scrub to remove all of that dust. And then I just wiped over the nail with a little bit of acetone just to make sure all of that dust was fully removed. Then I have these Acute neon butterfly stickers. These are also from Modelones as well. They come in, I think, a polygel kit I was sent a while ago, and I thought that they would look quite cute on this design. So these simply peel off and stick onto the nail. So I've just picked off a couple of them using my tweezers, and I'm just making sure to really press them down so that they make a good contact with the acrylic nail. It was a little bit fiddly removing these from their backing paper with gloves on, but as you can see, when I'm pressing it down on the nail, I'm really making sure to give it a good rub just to make sure there's no creases in that sticker and to make sure that none of the areas are sticking up. These stickers are slightly raised or embossed, I think would be the right word, so they do tend to stick up a little bit, which can be noticeable in your top coat, but as long as they're stuck down firmly, they won't peel off. So just make sure that you've not got none of the edges sticking up or too many creases in them. They applied nice and easily though, so I didn't have too much trouble with them. And then once I'm happy with those stuck down, I'm going to come in and apply my gel top coat. So I did apply this slightly thicker to make sure that it's sealed in all around those stickers. I personally wouldn't normally do this if I was working on myself or a client. Instead of doing a thicker layer of top coat, I would do 2 thin coats. But just for quickness, for the purpose of the video, I come in with a slightly thicker layer just to seal them all in without having to do the faff of a second top coat. So once I've finished applying the top coat, I pop this in for a 60-second cure, and this is the finished result. So I felt as though it looked quite cute, but it was a really simple design to do, so it's definitely a beginner friendly one. I really hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, then please do give it a thumbs up or leave me a comment below, and if you're not already subscribed to my channel, I would absolutely love it if you did. I hope you're all doing okay, and if you're here in the UK, I hope you're enjoying the lovely weather we have at the moment. But once again, thank you all so much for watching. Lots of love. Bye bye.